Oh boy, we just got some strong Switch 2 Nintendo Direct signs. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and yes, it does look like there is mounting evidence for a big Nintendo Switch 2 Direct presentation in the not so distant future. Could it be this week, next week, or a bit after that? There's room for some debate here, but there are different things happening right now that are giving us some reason to expect a big presentation fairly soon. So we'll be discussing that along with a few other things related to Nintendo and the Switch 2 today. But before going forward, let me point out I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. Let's talk about some Nintendo Switch 2 accessories provided to me by Transnovo, the sponsor for today's video. So as you see here, Transnovo provided to me a Switch 2 screen protector, a Switch 2 Joy-Con charging station, and a Switch 2 carrying case set that actually includes a variety of other little trinkets. But first, let me talk a little bit about this Joy-Con charging station here, because it's rather impressive, I would say. Not only does it have this nice kickstand so you can set it at an incline, but once plugged in, it lights up and it looks very aesthetically pleasing, and of course, you can charge multiple Joy-Con 2s at a time. But onto the carrying case set, it includes a variety of things, another screen protector with a helpful guide, a variety of different Joy-Con nubs that you can attach for varying styles of comfort, some different caps for your dock to protect it from dust and dirt, a kickstand so you can prop up your Switch 2 in a variety of other different styles of angles, and even these really comfortable grips here that you can just slide on that give you a bit more to hold for your Joy-Con so they can feel more like a traditional controller. But the star of the show here is the carrying case itself. Looking at it up close, it has a nice comfortable texture. On the inside, it has some nice soft felt padding. There is a lot of space for a variety of Switch 2 cartridges. You have a nice little compartment where you can put a variety of other little things for your Switch 2. And of course, it holds your Switch 2 in there quite snugly. You can zip it up. There's a really nice handle, and it feels wonderful. So I strongly recommend you check out these Transnovo accessories. They will all be linked in the description below. And also, by the way, here's a 15% discount code, Andres15. Now, we actually just got some significant news regarding the live-action Legend of Zelda movie. I wouldn't say this part has to do with the direct itself, but I'm just talking about it because it is fairly significant. So here we see officially from Nintendo's Twitter page, here's their official translation, "This is Miyamoto. For production reasons, we are changing the release date of the live-action film of The Legend of Zelda to May 7th, 2027. It will be some weeks later than the release timing we originally announced, and we will take the extra time to make the film as good as it can be. Thank you for your patience." So we have a delay for the Zelda movie, but it's not by much. Initially it was going to be in March. It happening in May. Personally, I don't think it makes that much of a big difference here, and to be honest with you, I was somewhat expecting a possible delay before this was announced, so if this is the only delay we see for the live-action Zelda movie, I would consider that to be actually a fairly sizable W. Now, given that the focus of this video is talking about a potential Nintendo Direct, I will say that there are some subtle implications here from this announcement. Because we have seen in the past that we've gotten news on Nintendo movies, so with the Mario movie, they did announce the cast in a normal Direct, and I'm not talking about the Mario movie Directs before that. In a general Direct in September, they told us about the casting for the movie. So could there be a Nintendo Direct where some kind of announcement like this could be made? Yes. And perhaps, now that they've given us an update on when the movie's actually coming out, they may have a better understanding because they're a bit further into the process and some details have been ironed out. Like potentially the casting for the movie. So maybe in the next Nintendo Direct, they could tell us the casting for the movie. Now, maybe it won't be in this Direct, maybe it'll be in the September Direct we usually get later into this year. Or we have to wait until next year, 2026, where it will be Zelda's 40th anniversary, and I do think there's a much stronger chance that there will be a great deal of marketing regarding this movie throughout the year. However, I will say, with the movie now coming out in May of 2027, they have more time in the year of 2027 to market the movie, so they may not need to do as much in 2026. Still, I think we should see something about the live-action movie in terms of like an actual scene, some kind of trailer, in 2026. I still think that, so I'm not expecting any substantial live-action Zelda movie news in terms of like learning about the cast or seeing footage this year, but it is possible we could see a cast announcement this year in some kind of Direct. So moving on to an update we got regarding this Nintendo Direct rumor, we have something said by PH Brazil on Family Boards. So for those that don't know, PH Brazil, a journalist, has spoken about Directs in the past, and more recently he has dialed it back in terms of talking about leaks and such, and he just kind of focuses on his own channel. However, he said something during a live stream where he had heard that a Nintendo Direct could be happening in the launch week of Switch 2 or the week afterwards. Switch 2 came out last week. There was nothing then. Here we are at the beginning of this week. That would be the week after the launch of Switch 2. So if this information is to be true, then there could be a Nintendo Direct announced this week, if this information is to be true. As I've brought up in multiple videos, when we look at the last few years, now that E3 is no longer a thing and Nintendo's no longer participating in an event like that, where there would be a big presentation in the beginning of June where Nintendo would have their Direct, because that's no longer a thing, we've seen that in the last 3 years, they have put out their Nintendo Direct presentations for the month of June and the second half of June. So I have been on the skeptical side of this rumor for that reason, but also given the launch of the Switch 2 itself is kind of a big deal and there should be a lot of focus on that alone, I've also been fairly skeptical of a Direct happening the launch week of Switch 2, but the week afterwards, it does become significantly more possible. Anyways, here's the update from Brazil on Family Boards. Hey there everyone. I'm purposely trying to stay away from message boards in general, but since I discovered my comments from last week found their way here, I should probably say this. I'm trying to disassociate from the whole leaker thing. I'm focusing on opinionative content creation and general reporting, which will end up being informed by leaked stuff at some point, but not necessarily. I briefly mentioned Direct stuff offhand when discussing the lead up to Summer Games Fest during a stream a couple days ago, but that was an error of judgment. I genuinely didn't anticipate the rest of the internet finding out within minutes, but that's clearly out of my control nowadays. The person I heard this info from insists on it, but I've watched this film before, and with Nate hearing otherwise, Nate the Hate, we'll talk about that in a moment, I no longer believe we'll have a Direct soon. You may consider this me backtracking, as it is, although I never meant to track in the first place. I don't know what their plans are, and I'm not going to talk about them publicly in case I found out. Hope you all have a fun Switch 2 launch, enjoy your games, be nice to each other, and that's that. See ya. So here Brazil is saying personally he does not believe there will be a Direct soon because Nate the Hate, who usually has a better grip on when Directs are going to be happening at least shortly before they're about to happen, he has said he hasn't heard anything. However, Brazil's source insists on the information. So these details here are a bit conflicting. As always, when it comes to things like this, take it with a grain of salt. However, as I've said in the past, history shows that there should be some kind of Direct in June, just probably not this soon. But there's more going on here. A lot more, I would argue, actually. So going back to a statement from Brad Smith of Microsoft on February 24th of 2023, we want the record to be clear and address any misunderstandings. I'm delighted to repost below this statement and affirm Microsoft's strong commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo's customers if our acquisition of Activision Blizzard is approved by regulators. And yes, it was. Anyways, they said here, Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players, the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. This was over 2 years ago, February 2023, I'm recording this, June 2025. And so this is being brought up because we just had Summer Games Fest, we just had an Xbox presentation, and in there, they announced Call of Duty Black Ops 7 coming out later this year. Here, as Daniel Ahmed quotes, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is scheduled for release on Xbox Series XS, Xbox One, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and on PC via Xbox PC, Battle.net, and Steam. So, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is coming to all of these platforms later this year. But the one it has not been announced for is Nintendo Switch 2, which we have seen is actually getting some pretty significant, solid third-party support. We have seen with the Switch 2, it can do a lot more than PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. It's definitely somewhere in between those old gen consoles and the new gen consoles. Even in some cases, Switch 2 games are looking better than Xbox Series S games. And so, from a hardware perspective, considering what the game is coming to, there really shouldn't be any concerns here that they can get full feature and content parity of Call of Duty on Switch 2. We even seen that with Switch 2 they now have game chat, so voice chat options and online options are available on Switch 2 as they are on other platforms as well. So parity is more than just possible, it's expected at this point. And we've actually seen some pretty impressive games already running on Switch 2 for launch, like Cyberpunk 2077. And on the note of this particular game, we know when they started working on this game for the console. So as you see here written on IGN, the road to Cyberpunk's 2077 Switch 2 version began back in summer 2023 when Nintendo met with CD Projekt Red to discuss its then top secret new hardware. At that point, there was no software development kit. Just more like, okay, there is a possibility for us to collaborate with this hardware. I remember I was in the room and we just looked at each other. It was like, yeah, of course we will check it out. It looks like a really cool product. So back in summer of 2023, they weren't even necessarily fully committed to bringing Cyberpunk to Switch 2, yet Cyberpunk is running and looking fantastic on Switch 2 day one. So we have this Microsoft agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty dating before when this supposed meeting with CD Projekt Red and Nintendo happened, where they weren't even fully committed to bringing Cyberpunk over, and Call of Duty is coming out later this year. So from a time perspective, I think it's clear that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 should be able to make it to Switch 2 this year, especially considering they are targeting content and full feature parity and having them available at the same time, and we've seen what the Switch 2 can do. This should be a very attainable goal for years to come. The only thing that I think might be holding back Call of Duty from being available on Switch 2 like the other platforms this year is just because they need to establish a framework of Switch 2 development so they can have these games coming out consistently every year alongside all the other platforms, and right now they just have so much priority on bringing it to everything else that it's holding them back on getting the Switch 2 version ready for this year. That's the only thing I can consider here in terms of why it has been announced yet, unless, and this is a big one, they are purely just saving this announcement for a big Nintendo Direct in the not so distant future. We actually heard from Ethan Gach of Kotaku this. Sources tell Kotaku both Microsoft and Nintendo are still working on getting Call of Duty on the latter's hardware and will announce something in the future. So there's a lot of room for interpretation there. What is announcing something in the future? Does that mean they're going to announce Call of Duty really soon? Or are they going to wait till like next year to announce the next Call of Duty? Has Switch 2 missed the boat on Call of Duty Black Ops 7? Or is this something in the future just, hey, there's a Nintendo Direct happening in a couple weeks, and they're saving this big announcement of Call of Duty finally making it back to Nintendo after so many years for this special Nintendo Direct presentation? I can see them making a big deal out of this, and looking at how Nintendo had a variety of creators' voices leading up to the launch of Switch 2, I don't see why they would want to stop. I think they would want to continue doing things like this. So they had their first wave, and they are preparing for their second wave, and Call of Duty may be a big part of that. So they may treat this announcement of Call of Duty coming to Switch 2 as a bigger deal. They may even go as far as to say that there are some things about the Switch 2 version that are special. Like, for example, how, yes, it is a handheld version, a mobile version of Call of Duty, but also mouse controls, because the Switch 2 does have some unique elements. So there is some reason to perhaps think that they're holding back on confirming Call of Duty Black Ops 7 to Switch 2 because they want to save this as a special announcement during an Nintendo Direct. And it would make some extra sense because a lot of people have been remarking on how, yes, Nintendo was partnered with Summer Games Fest, but there weren't really any big Switch 2 announcements during this event really at all. Just like a commercial. So what's going on? The Switch 2 clearly can run most of these games, and it's the hottest thing on the market right now. Maybe it really is just the case that a lot of third-party announcements are being held off for the big Nintendo Direct, which probably is going to be a bigger deal than Summer Games Fest, at least in terms of interest on Switch 2. But now I want to point out a rumor about some sort of major announcements happening soon that might pertain to a Direct might not, but now that we have extra context over what has happened or transpired over the last couple days, I think it is definitely leaning towards it being a big direct presentation. So I'm going to Nash Weedle, and I've been talking about Nash Weedle a lot lately. Why? Because Nash Weedle keeps getting things right. As we've learned more and more about different Switch 2 plans, they keep getting things right. Mouse controls in Metroid Prime 4, a special edition of Elden Ring, Assassin's Creed Shadows being leaked for Switch 2, 3D Donkey Kong instead of 3D Mario in the big Switch 2 Direct in April. The list goes on here, and here's one more. So, back on March 19th, Nash Weedle said that No Man's Sky would be getting a free upgrade for Switch 2. And what happened just a few days ago, right before the launch of Switch 2, it was confirmed that there is a free, substantial upgrade to No Man's Sky for Switch 2 owners. And I think this is just one of those things where it's too detailed to just chalk it up to a lucky guess. Because, one, you have to predict that there would be an upgrade to No Man's Sky on Switch 2, which that part maybe you could make a solid prediction and be a little lucky and get right. But to further specify that they would make the choice of it being a free upgrade when there's a variety of upgrades from Switch 1 to Switch 2 games that are paid, I think this goes to show that Nash Weedle does get legitimate information, and it's becoming more and more believable that this is truly the case as more and more things Nash Weedle says becomes true. So how does this relate to a Nintendo Direct? Well, not so long ago, Nash Weedle talked about a Nintendo Direct in so many words. Here in Spanish, Leak Express, Nintendo ha confirmado a retailers que poco después del lanzamiento de Switch 2 habrá nuevos anuncios. No se confirma si será a través de un Nintendo Direct, pero parece que se viene una nueva oleada de anuncios. So we talked about this a little while ago. Basically, what's going on is that apparently Nintendo has confirmed to retailers that there will be significant new announcements shortly after the launch of Switch 2. However, Nash Weedle here says that it may not be a Direct. But this was last week. This is before the launch of Switch 2. On the eve of the launch of Switch 2, Nash Weedle said this. Since then, we've gone through Summer Games Fest, where we were thinking there might be some kind of announcements there, possibly, maybe not super substantial ones, but something that might fit what Nash Weedle is alluding to here, given that Nintendo has partnered with Summer Games Fest, and that did not happen. In fact, it was very, very quiet. So it looks like these announcements have not happened yet, and here we are in the week after the launch of Switch 2, shortly after the launch of Switch 2, and we definitely need to get some announcements on things. So basically, the announcements are not coming from Summer Games Fest. I think they would probably be coming in a Nintendo Direct if these are to be true, and the fact of the matter is, when you think about it logically, yes, more announcements need to come soon. Nintendo needs to update us on their future projects. We still know so little about Donkey Kong Bonanza, and guess what? Donkey Kong Bonanza comes out next month. So they need to further detail this game, but they also need to give us a date on Dragon Drive. It's a summer release. When in summer is it? We are now already in summer, and we do not have a release date for this game, a solid one. And then what about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond? The game does not have a release date, we just know it's coming out in 2025. A lot of us think, myself included, that it's probably coming out before Pokemon Legends ZA on October 16th, which has me leaning towards a September release. And if that's the case, guess what? They probably need to pin that down officially, publicly, very soon. And then what about Kirby Air Riders? It just has the blanket 2025 timing as well. No gameplay has been shown yet. We need to learn about that. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is a winter release. Could be early next year, so maybe we can wait on that one. But still, there are some things that we need updates on very soon, like probably this month soon, given the history of Nintendo announcing things and how much of a lead up we need before those things actually come out. And that's just the first party stuff. As we've alluded to, there's a lot of third party things that need to be announced, and Summer Games Fest, we thought there'd be announcements there were not. But there's another angle I want to throw out here, and that's Mario Kart World. Mario Kart World just came out, the launch title for Switch 2, a very big deal. Everyone's talking about this game. But this game, I believe, is going to need to get some updates. They're probably going to be updating this game throughout the entire Switch 2 generation, keeping it relevant, likely supporting it as the strongest selling game, and keeping it relevant with different updates throughout. And we already talked about how it seems like there's a plan to be updating Mario Kart World relatively soon. We've talked about how the Mario Kart World producer Kosuke Yabuki has already talked about how there are some plans coming later down. He can't say exactly what, but perhaps we could get 200cc later down the road. Perhaps there's something going on with Diddy Kong himself, but he can't speak on that either, all implying that there are other plans for future updates to this game. And then just looking at Mario Kart World itself, I do see a lot of room for different improvements or updates, some of which substantial, some of which not so substantial. Like within the free roam, I love the free roam as I talked about a couple days ago, but it's not perfect. There are some things that could be improved upon. Like how with the P-Switch missions, there's no way to really track it, and apparently there's like 400 of them, and like 200 Peach medallions. There's no way to track this in the game. I could easily see them adding some sort of update where you can track these things, and it might even be by design that you can't track it at first, because they may want you just to explore randomly, not trying to 100% it yet, but they'll add this feature a little bit later on to get people to go back so they can go around trying to 100% the game, keeping the game relevant for a longer amount of time. Point is, I can easily see some free updates being announced fairly soon for Mario Kart World in a big Nintendo Direct. And something else I want to add to this conversation here, I've already also talked about how it looks like there is a plan to bring Diddy Kong to both Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World. I have a whole video dedicated to that, but just another little detail I noticed when playing through Mario Kart World. In the credits, you will see a little piece of art that showed Donkey Kong and Pauline right next to each other. It's very curious placement here. These two characters were fairly significant characters, especially Donkey Kong, and these characters only have 2 costumes while everyone else has a whole bunch. The thinking is, they'll be getting more as we approach the release of Bonanza, perhaps through free updates, perhaps these things will be announced in a Nintendo Direct, and I just think it's interesting that both of them are right next to each other. Feels like they're hinting at something here. But anyways, I think a Nintendo Direct is happening fairly soon. Do I think it's happening this week soon? That would be amazing. I'm not expecting necessarily this week, but history shows June is usually the safest bet. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.